Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Jaya Radha Kala Chanji Radha Kala Chanji Radhe Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Hare Krishna. Can you hear me okay? I'm hearing more the room and not the mic. I tried that. I don't think it's very much. That seems a bit louder. Hare Krishna. No, that sounds better, I think. Hare Krishna. Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Okay, Hare Krishna. Good morning, devotees. My name is Manjari Gopika Devi Dasi, and today we will be reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 28. Canto 3, Chapter 28, verses 34 through 44, and focusing on verse 34. I ask for your blessings that I may speak something pleasing to my spiritual master, to Srila Prabhupada, and to all the devotees. Let us begin by, excuse me, let us all together chant the invocation first to begin. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim sarvasvatim vyasyam tato jayamudirayet nashta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloki bhaktir bhavati naishtiki Om Ajnana Timirandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, okay. As I stated just a moment ago, we're reading from Canto 3, Chapter 28, verses 34 through 44, and we'll focus on verse 34. But I thought what we could do is, do we have a mic? Just Jumna Prabhu is always prepared. Thank you. He has a mic. So we can pass the mic around and read the translations for verses 34 through 44. Then we'll come back to 34 and we'll do the Sanskrit and purport and focus on that. Would you like to begin, Drishtajumna Prabhu?
By following this course, the yogi gradually develops pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. In the course of his progress in devotional service, the hairs on his body stand erect through excessive joy, and he is constantly bathed in a stream of tears occasioned by intense love. Gradually, even the mind, which he used as a means to attract the Lord, as one attracts a fish to a hook, withdraws from material activity.
Text 35. When the mind is thus completely freed from all material contamination and detached from material objectives, it is just like the flame of a lamp. At that time the mind is actually dovetailed with that of the Supreme Lord, and is experienced as one with him, because it is freed from the interactive flow of the material qualities.
Thus, situated in the highest transcendental stage, the mind ceases from all material reaction and becomes situated in its own glory, transcendental to all material conceptions of happiness and distress. At that time, the yogi realizes the truth of his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He discovers that pleasure and pain, as well as their interactions, which he attributed to his own self, are actually due to the false ego, which is a product of ignorance.
Whoa. Because he has achieved his real identity, the perfectly realized soul has no conception of how the material body is moving or acting, just as an intoxicated person cannot understand whether or not he has clothes on his body.
The body of such a liberated yogi, along with the senses, is taken charge of by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it functions until its destined activities are finished. The liberated devotee, being awake to his constitutional position and thus situated in samadhi, the highest perfectional stage of yoga, does not accept the byproducts of the material body as his own. Thus he considers his bodily activities to be like the activities of a body in a dream.
Because of great affection for family and wealth, one accepts a son and some money as his own. And due to affection for the material body, one thinks that it is his, but actually one can understand that his family and wealth are different from him. The liberated soul can understand that he and his body are not the same.
The blazing fire is different from the flames, from the sparks, and from the smoke, although all are intimately connected because they are born from the same blazing wood.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known as Param Brahma, is the seer. He is different from the Jiva soul, or individual living entity, who is combined with the senses, the five elements, and consciousness.
A yogi should see the same soul in all manifestations, for all that exists is a manifestation of different energies of the Supreme. In this way, the devotee should see all living entities without distinction. That is the realization of the Supreme Soul.
As fire is exhibited in different forms of wood, so under different conditions of the modes of material nature, the pure spirit soul manifests itself in different bodies.
Thus, the yogi can be in the self-realized position after conquering the insurmountable spell of Maya, who presents herself as both the cause and effect of this material manifestation, and is therefore very difficult to understand.
Thank you. We will return now to our focus verse of the day, which is verse 34 in this section. Thank you. Okay, I'll chant the first line and then you chant. We'll go like that. I call in response for the interest of time today. Evam harau bhagavati pratilabdha bhavo. Bhaktya dravadridaya utpulaka pramodat. Autkantya bashpa kalaya muhur ardya manas. Tachchapi chitta badisham shranakair viyunkte. Let us do the word for word translation. We can do this together. There's a lot of wonderful words. Evam, thus, harau, towards Lord Hari, Bhagavati, the personality of Godhead, pradilabdha, developed, bhava, pure love, bhaktya, by devotional service, dravat, melting, hridaya, his heart, utpulaka, experiencing standing of the hairs of the body, pramodat, from excessive joy, autkantya, occasioned by intense love, bashpa kalaya, by a stream of tears, moha, constantly, ardya mana, being afflicted, tat, that, cha, and, api, even, chitta, the mind, badisham, hook, shanaka, gradually, viyunkta, withdraws. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. By following this course, the yogi gradually develops pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. In the course of his progress in devotional service, the hairs on his body stand erect through excessive joy, and he is constantly bathed in a stream of tears occasioned by intense love. Gradually, even the mind, which he used as a means to attract the Lord, as one attracts a fish to a hook, withdraws from material activity. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Here it is clearly mentioned that meditation, which is an action of the mind, is not the perfect stage of samadhi or absorption. In the beginning, the mind is employed in attracting the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in the higher stages, there is no question of using the mind. A devotee becomes accustomed to serving the Lord by purification of his senses. In other words, the yoga principles of meditation are required as long as one is not situated in pure devotional service. The mind is used to purify the senses. But when the senses are purified by meditation, there is no need to sit in a particular place and try to meditate upon the form of the Lord. One becomes so habituated that he automatically engages in the personal service of the Lord. When the mind forcibly is engaged upon the form of the Lord, this is called nirbija yoga, or lifeless yoga, for the yogi does not automatically engage in the personal service of the Lord. But when he is constantly thinking of the Lord, that is called sabija yoga, or living yoga. One has to be promoted to the platform of living yoga. One should engage in the service of the Lord 24 hours a day, as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. The stage of Pramanjana Charita can be attained by developing complete love. When one's love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead in devotional service is fully developed, one always sees the Lord, even without artificially meditating on his form. His vision is divine because there is no other engagement, or rather, because he has no other engagement. At this stage of spiritual realization, it is not necessary to engage the mind artificially. Since the meditation recommended in the lower stages is a means to come to the platform of devotional service, those already engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord are above such meditation. This stage of perfection is called Krishna consciousness. A little background on where we are, briefly. In the third canto, chapters 25 through 33, Lord Kapila is teaching his mother, Devahuti. Mother Devahuti asks 7 questions. I won't say them all now in the interest of time, but the question that's being addressed here is the 4th question that she asks, wherein she asks about the processes of yoga. In today's chapter, the 28th chapter in particular, it explains the limbs of Ashtanga, the description of the Lord's form for dharana, a limb-by-limb description of the Lord's form as dhyan, and the understanding of a yogi. Before I can continue, I want to note that when the scriptures mention Ashtanga Yoga, they are not referring to what we in modern society call Ashtanga Yoga. If you go on Google right now and put in Ashtanga Yoga Dallas, it'll populate with all these different yoga studios. So the term Ashtanga Yoga has evolved over time, and its contemporary usage is often associated with a specific style of yoga asana sequence and a yoga asana practice popularized by K. Patabi Joyce. However, the original mention of Ashtanga Yoga in Vedic scriptures refers to a broader, more comprehensive system, which is what we'll discuss here. Today there's Vinyasa Yoga and Power Yoga and Yin Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga, and but originally there's just one yoga that encompasses the limbs that we will discuss here, and that was known as the Ashtanga Yoga system. Ashta means 8, Anga is limbs. In the Ashtanga Yoga system, the metaphor of a tree is used, where all of this tree is Ashtanga Yoga, and there are these different branches. If you take yoga teacher training, like I did, you learn what those different limbs are. I don't know whether or not they're discussed in modern day, but I think it's worth mentioning them so we can better understand the context here of this versus Bhakti Yoga, so I will explain. So the different limbs in the Ashtanga Yoga system are 1, the yams, which are the ethical standards a yogi must follow. They're ethical principles and moral guidelines for how one interacts with the world. And there are 5 yams. They are ahimsa, nonviolence, satya, truthfulness, asteya, non-stealing, brahmacharya, we know that one, celibacy, and aparigraha, which can mean non-attachment or non-grasping. Then the second limb is the niyams, which are the personal disciplines the yogi must follow. And there are 5 niyams, and those are saucha, cleanliness, santosha, contentment, tapas, we know that one, austerity, svadhyaya, self-study, and ishvara pranidharana, which is surrender unto God, ishvara. Then the third limb is the asanas, the poses. The 4th limb is pranayam, which is controlling the life force energy through very specific, intricate breathing techniques. The 5th limb is pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses. The 6th limb is dharana, which is the practice of concentration, focusing the mind on a single point or object. And this limb aims to cultivate unwavering mental focus, which lays the foundation for meditation, which leads to the 7th limb, which is dhyan. It's the sustained state of meditation. It involves continuous and effortless concentration. And then the 8th limb is samadhi, which is often described as the ultimate goal of this Ashtanga system. We'll get into that in a second, which is the state of profound spiritual realization and almost a kind of a union. It's often said a union with the divine. You're just filled with ecstatic bliss. So these limbs of Ashtanga Yoga are mentioned in this chapter, verses 1 through 12. And then dharana, that practice of concentration for the yogi, is explained in verses 13 through 18. And it's explained here that the dharana of the yogi is concentrating on the beauty of the Lord's form. his face, his eyes, his bodily features, the Kaustubha jewel. And then the verses 19 through 33 explain the dhyan, that meditation where the yogi meditates on the individual limbs of the Lord, starting from his feet and ending in his beautiful laughter. Then there's the final section in this where the understanding of the yogi, verses 34 to 38 discuss the liberation of the yogi and the state of his mind. And then the second section that we read, 39 through 44, explains the thought process of a yogi. So today's verse 34, it begins with, by following this course, what is the whole verse? By following this course, the yogi gradually develops pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So what is this course? In the previous verse, it's explained, it's meditating on the Lord's laugh. By meditating on the Lord's laugh, one develops that pure love. The previous verse 33 is, with devotion steeped in love and affection, the yogi should meditate within the core of his heart upon the laughter of Lord Vishnu. The laughter of Vishnu is so captivating that it can easily be meditated upon. When the Supreme Lord is laughing, one can see his small teeth, which resemble jasmine buds, rendered rosy by the splendor of his lips. Once devoting his mind to this, the yogi should no longer desire to see anything else. In the purport of today's verse, Prabhupada mentions, he talks about two kinds of yoga, nirbija and sabija. Nirbija he calls lifeless yoga, which means the mind is forcibly engaged to concentrate on the Lord, the form of the Lord. And this is what Ashtanga Yoga is. Within Ashtanga, the mind is a means to meditate on the form of the Lord. The mind controls the senses, and that mind is forcibly engaged upon the form of the Lord, as opposed to the living yoga, where a yogi is constantly thinking of the Lord because he's in service to the Lord. So this is the platform we have to be promoted to, because that's Bhakti Yoga. And Prabhupada explains that. And in support of that, Prabhupada quotes from the Brahma Samhita, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena, where your eyes they're tinged with the salve of love. When the translation he mentions is, when one's love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead and devotional service is fully developed, one always sees the Lord, even without artificially meditating on his form. His vision is divine because he has no other engagement. So when Ashtanga Yoga is perfected, one is elevated to the stage, which is Sabija Yoga, or living yoga. That happens at the culmination of Ashtanga Yoga, which is Samadhi. And it's interesting because I'm a yoga teacher, and I went through yoga teacher training, and all the texts, most of them that were read, it states that you're taught that, okay, Samadhi is the ultimate goal of this yoga process. But Srimad Bhagavatam confirms that Samadhi is the final stage of Ashtanga Yoga. It is the final stage of Ashtanga Yoga, but it's not the end. It's then the beginning of the Sabija Yoga. The yogi is able to experience ecstatic bliss, seeing the limbs of the Lord, but he doesn't stay there. He or she is drawn to engage their senses in the loving service of the Lord. In that situation, as Prabhupada says, one always sees the Lord without artificially meditating on his form. And the most beautiful thing is that the process given by our acharyas to engage in the loving transcendental service of the Lord is above all such meditation. These verses that we read that the yogi is supposed to meditate on is beautiful, but the process that we're given is above all of it because it's loving service, and we don't have to force the mind to meditate on these things. This stage of perfection, Prabhupada says in the purport, is Krishna consciousness. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about the different paths of yoga, the 4 paths of yoga, karma yoga, sankhya yoga, dhyana yoga, bhakti yoga. But all of those other 3 paths, they have to culminate in bhakti yoga. Just like the Ashtanga yoga, it is explained. You then move to the Sabija platform, and then you start bhakti yoga. I imagine it as kind of like the confluence of rivers. I guess that's what Kumbh Mela is, right? Everybody goes to that sacred spot where all of these rivers converge, and that's how I imagine Bhakti Yoga. All these rivers just flow into the river of Bhakti. So they're all steps on the ladder to Bhakti Yoga. In Ashtanga Yoga, you cannot go to the Sabija stage without first perfecting the Nirbija stage, in which one controls the mind and senses by focusing on controlling the mind and senses. In our process, Krishna consciousness, a shortcut is given. Instead of walking up all these stairs, Prabhupada says that we are given an elevator. The focus in Krishna consciousness is not on artificially controlling the mind and senses. There's an element of redirecting the mind, but it's more about engaging the senses in the service of the Lord, right? In eating prasadam, in hearing a kirtan, in reading Srimad Bhagavatam, in looking at pictures of the Lord. In the second verse of ISKCON, Lord Chaitanya says, there are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names. There are no hard and fast rules for chanting. Jayadvaita Swami said that we, in ISKCON, we have soft and slow rules, not hard and fast. We have, when we chant, yes, we must try to hear the mantra. When we chant, we should not be on our phone. We should not be planning our day. We must do our best to bring our mind back to the mantra. But in comparison to this Nirbija Ashtanga system, that's really pretty basic kind of nothing requirement, isn't it? You just have to come back to the mantra. You have to come back to the mantra. In the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains to Arjuna the requirements of Ashtanga yogi, what they should do. He gives very specific instructions. Does anyone remember the things that he says? In the 6th chapter, what he tells when he's explaining this yoga.
Sthiramasanamatmana. The first and foremost condition is one has to retire to a solitary place. The second one is Chailajina Kushottaram. You have to sit on a kusha grass and then you have to meditate. The following verses explain you have to meditate on the breathing and so on and so forth.
Yes. Thank you. Krishna tells Arjuna, to practice yoga, one should go to a secluded place and should lay kusha grass on the ground and then cover it with a deerskin and a soft cloth. The seat should be neither too high nor too low and should be situated in a sacred place. The yogi should then sit on it very firmly and practice yoga to purify the heart by controlling his mind, senses, and activities and fixing the mind on one point. One should hold one's body, neck, and head erect in a straight line and stare steadily at the tip of the nose. Thus, with an unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free from sex life, one should meditate upon me within the heart and make me the ultimate goal of life, thus practicing constant control of the body, mind, and activities. The mystic transcendentalist, his mind regulated, attains to the kingdom of God or the abode of Krishna by cessation of material existence. And what are our requirements? That's it. It's chant and be happy. Just chanting and hearing. Just chanting and hearing. Anywhere, anytime. And again, Lord Chaitanya said there are no hard and fast rules for chanting these names. You don't have to get out the deerskin and the kusha grass and go to a secluded place and be completely abstained from sex life. We have to follow the regulative principles because those do help us put some guardrails on our regulate. We do need some regulation of our mind and senses in order for the mind to be peaceful. But all we have to do is abstain from meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, not sex life altogether, just illicit sex and intoxication. So there's a focus on regulation there, but it's certainly not the same. In Bhagavad Gita 8.28, Krishna says, Vedeshu yagneshu tapashu chaiva daneshu yat punya palam parishtam atyeti tatsarvam vidam viditva yogi param stanam upaiti chadyam. A person who accepts the path of devotional service is not bereft of the results derived from studying the Vedas, performing sacrifices, undergoing austerities, giving charity, or pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities. Simply by performing devotional service, he attains all of these. And at the end, he reaches the supreme eternal abode. We know there are 9 stages of Bhakti Yoga. Adhushraddha, little bit of faith, sadhusanga, association of devotees, bhajana kriya, which is devotional service, anartana vritti, decreasing of unwanted attachments, nishta, steadiness, ruchi, taste, where you just can't give it up, asakti, intense attachment, bhava, love, and then prem, pure love for Krishna. In this verse, it's discussed, the ecstatic symptoms are mentioned with regard to the Ashtanga yogi. It says the hairs on his body stand erect through excessive joy. He's bathed constantly in tears, occasioned by intense love. But these things, these symptoms are experienced, we know, in the bhava and prema stages of bhakti yoga without ever going through the near beach situation. So I was thinking how if you make a single mistake in the Ashtanga system, you get no results. If your mind wavers for a moment, then you've lost everything you've come so far for with dharana, with dhyan. You get no results. If you sleep too much, if you sleep too little, if you eat too much, if you eat too little, you get no results. You must be 100% perfect 100% of the time to progress through the nirbija stage just to get to the sabija stage. This Ashtanga system, it's like getting into Harvard. You know, Harvard is the most selective university in the United States of America. It has an admission rate of 3%. For example, in 2023, 56,937 people applied for admission to Harvard. And out of those 56,937 people, 1,942 were given admission. So Ashtanga is like Harvard. You have to not just be good. You have to be extraordinary to commit to this system and go all the way to the Sabija stage. But here in Krishna consciousness, and what makes Harvard so special anyway? Well, it's got all this prestige and reputation. The best of the experts of the experts teach at Harvard. It's like probably even harder to teach at Harvard than it is to be a student at Harvard. Right? And they have access to the best resources in the world in terms of networking, in terms of documents and research and technology. But here in Krishna consciousness, you get access to Harvard resources right away. You get access to the highest, most excellent of all yoga systems from day one. And all you need to do is just follow this much simpler process to get Krishna Prem. And how do you get into our ISKCON Harvard? It's very simple, a very simple application process. One is endeavor, follow for hundreds of years, most likely. Or 2, kripa, you come into contact with devotees. It's kind of like being a legacy and you're moved up in the application process. You know, if you get into Harvard, you will most likely graduate from Harvard. They have one of the highest graduation rates of 97%. 97% of students at Harvard graduate. In our Harvard, our ISKCON, Prabhupada promises a 100% graduation rate. Prabhupada said that if you take to the regulative principles very strictly and chant at least 16 rounds a day, you can go back home, back to Godhead in this lifetime. And he said that many times, spoken and written. I trust Srila Prabhupada. A 100% graduation rate. But you have to complete your requirements to get the degree. You do have to put in some efforts. But in Krishna consciousness, we don't have those prerequisite classes of kusha grass and secluded place and the 8 limbs and the meditating on the forms of the... Our process is both a means and an end. We are at the Sabija Yoga stage simply by practicing Krishna consciousness. Simply what you're doing right now in this room. To close, I want to share this verse that comes later in the 3rd canto. It's spoken by Devahuti in Canto 3, Chapter 33, sorry, yes. Canto 3, chapter 33, verse 7. Devahuti says, "Oh, how glorious are they whose tongues are chanting your holy name. Even if born in the families of dog eaters, such persons are worshipable. Persons who chant the holy name of your lordship must have executed all kinds of austerities and fire sacrifices and achieved all the good manners of the Aryans. To be chanting the holy name of your lordship, they must have bathed at the holy places of pilgrimage, studied the Vedas, and fulfilled everything required." That is what I have prepared. Please share questions and comments.
Hi, Krishna. Thank you so much for the class. I really appreciate it, especially with your background in other forms of yoga, so that was very helpful. I do have a question. You were just speaking about how Prabhupada says that all we have to do is follow this process, chant the 16 rounds, and then follow the 4 regulative principles, and we can go back to Godhead. But we also hear that it says that one may be chanting for however many of years and still not experience this bhav, the actual love for God. So can you explain how we can go back without, though we may be engaged in the process, we still might not have that experience of love of God, like actual love for God, and still go back home to Godhead?
That's definitely a good question, and it's always been in the back of my mind because I feel like whenever I teach a class, 3 things come up. 1, I grew up Catholic. 2, I teach yoga. 3, I'm married to an Indian man. So here I go again. That question's always in the back of my mind because I grew up Catholic, and there was always this air of uncertainty as to if you were going to be good enough to go to heaven. There's this term called Catholic guilt, where it's just like no matter what you're doing, you always have this guilt that it's like not good enough and that somehow you're sinning and you need to go atone for it. So I have that conditioning as well. But, when I read the Bhagavad Gita, I remember reading in the 6th chapter. And I remember going to India and asking this question to that Prabhu over there. Where were we? We're in Rishikesh. We were walking along. We were going for a hike with a bunch of yoga people. And I was like, all right, so I'm chanting and I'm doing this, but like what happens if somebody just, they don't progress, and then they die kind of thing. And he was like, didn't you read the Bhagavad Gita? I was like, I'm still reading it. And then he pointed me to that verse in the 6th chapter. So of course I always remember it, where Krishna says to Arjuna, the transcendentalist who doesn't complete, and I don't mean to put words in his mouth, but doesn't complete this purification process in this lifetime, he picks up where he leaves off. So I can't really speak to our personal salvation paths because I think we all have our own conditionings. But Prabhupada does say over and over that if you strictly follow this, and I think what he means by that if you strictly follow these principles and you chant the 16 rounds daily, then you are going to move through those 9 stages of bhakti that are discussed. Mm-hmm. And that does take time. It does take time. I don't know if I'm going to make it, but I believe what Prabhupada says, and we can look at other devotees who have made that progress in this lifetime. Gokulananda Prabhu.
Thank you. The verse that you mentioned about is in Chaitanya Charitamrita Adilila 8th chapter. So I think it goes something like Bahujanma kare Shravana Kirtan Yadi kari Shravana Kirtan Tabhutana Pai Krishna Prema, something like that. So in that verse, Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport that if you are not following regulative principles, but he's emphasizing more on chanting with offenses. So if you are committing offenses, 10 offenses, right, to the holy name, then that will slow down the process. So going back to what she had mentioned in the class, right, there are, like Jayadvaita Swami said, there are soft and slow rules. So mm, in the very same purport, Srila Prabhupada also mentions, quoting Lord Chaitanya, that he didn't emphasize on regulative principles or anything like that. He just said two things, right? Chant Hare Krishna, do not criticize any devotees. So substantiating that point, Prabhupada quotes about Trinadapi Sunichana Tarupi Saishana. Right, so humility, that is the sorry, cardinal principle, that is the bottom line. So that is my understanding. If we just resort to this one particular principle, we are safeguarded.
So Saturday at Bhakti Circle, we're going to have a discussion on what is real love, led by Premamrita. And I was thinking that sometimes we want love to be those tears and that yearning for Krishna and that separation or this ecstatic thing. But we can look at our activities that there are some love for Krishna. I mean, you've literally giving up so much to come to this holy Dham, to teach kids, to put in time chanting 16 rounds. There's so much devotional service that you're doing, or we're doing. So there must be some love there for Krishna, right? Maybe we haven't got to the point where it's tears and it's like, that earning and stuff like that. But there must be something there. But what's stopping us from getting there is we still have some tinge of desire for our own gratification. And that's where the process is purifying us, and that we're around devotees and we're hearing Srimad Bhagavatam and we're continuing to be determined in our practice, because those things will get taken care of. So I guess my consoling is that don't be too hard on yourself. Don't be too hard on ourselves. We are actually doing lots of austerities just being here. And that austerity takes some kind of, love. Like the mother has so many austerities to the child that aren't necessarily like, hee hee, ha ha, so fun, like this is great joy for me. But the mother does it because there's love. So there's that part of love, and then there's the joy of love too. So that was my thought. Hare Krishna.
That's very nice.
Thank you, Nanda. Because I was thinking of exactly the same point. It's like, yes, we get to see sparks of it, but where's the intensity that is being talked about in these verses? I want to taste that. And like, in the end of this verse, it's saying, this is Krishna consciousness. I'm like, then what am I been practicing? Because I want to taste this, and I'm not. And so thank you for bringing that perspective that it is our own internal desires that are holding us back from that, and there is some taste. And then in the verse when it was, or the translations when we were reading, it said that, my question was, when a devotee experiences that, what is their desire to come back to do normal things? Once you've tasted something like that, what's, they're saying you become oblivious to your body, your mind. What sense does it make to come back? And then I was thinking of Srila Prabhupada, that, during his classes, that visibly he was experiencing those symptoms. And so is it that the only desire for devotees like that to want to come back is to give that to others? Otherwise, what sense does it make for anybody experiencing that to come back? Do you want to comment on that, as to why would anybody want to? Does anybody want to comment on that?
Well, but the thing that's being described here is the end of the Nirbija stage. Do you know what I mean? This isn't the Prem. This isn't Krishna Prem that's being described here. It's being so in ecstatic bliss that you've been meditating on this form of the Lord for thousands of years, and now you've reached Samadhi, and now you're so overwhelmed by the gorgeousness of the Lord, you don't want to stay here, you want to now serve the Lord. That's the point of this section. So I think in that respect, I think you may have answered your own question with then when you're at that level of wanting to serve the Lord, then you're willing to go wherever He wants you to go and do whatever He wants to do. He needs to come look at our sorry faces and help us out. Gokulananda Prabhu, my sorry face, not yours. You have a beautiful face.
You can see in the fourth canto, Dhruva Maharaj, right, after serving the Bhaktivedantis, when he retired from the worldly life and he started meditating according to the instructions of his spiritual master, Srila Narada Muni. So he had a glimpse of the four-handed beautiful form of Lord Vishnu. So he had attained the trance, the samadhi state. But when he, yearned to keep looking at it again and again, he couldn't see it. So then he heard the voice, the inner voice coming from within, that in this lifetime you won't be able to see me again. So you'll have to endeavor, engage yourself, in the devotional service. And in the next lifetime you can see me always.
I was really appreciating in your class this thought of the ISKCON Harvard, and that we have all of these resources, and particularly I was putting it towards insurmountable spell of Maya. Insurmountable means you can't do it. And so we really need so much this ISKCON Harvard, these great acharyas, the best teachers, the best process, because Maya is insurmountable. So we can really just be so thankful to Srila Prabhupada, what he's giving us, because only by his mercy is the spell of Maya surmountable.
I love that, yeah. Yes, go. You want to say something?
So I would like to read this one small section of purport of that verse. It is Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi 8:16. So in purport it's mentioned, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur says in this connection that unless one accepts, I repeat, unless one accepts Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, although one goes on chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra for many, many years, there is no possibility of his attaining the platform of devotional service. One must follow strictly the instructions of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu given in Shikshashtaka 3, Trinadapi Sunijana.
Well, I was thinking when I was preparing this class, sometimes I forget about this. I've only remembered it a couple times in the last decade. But when I was, on my spiritual journey, I was living in New York City, and I was always into the Beatles and, stuff like that. And I started doing yoga, and I was just interested in transcendental things. And I decided I've been doing yoga, and I wanted to learn how to meditate. And I had heard about transcendental meditation, which I know of because the Beatles did it. And so I Googled it in New York, and I thought, oh gosh, there's an actual TM Institute. That's what they shorten it to, Transcendental Meditation Institute. So in Transcendental Meditation, you're given a mantra, an individual mantra by your teacher, and you can't share it with anyone ever. If you share, allegedly, from what I been told, it's a one-syllable mantra that is individual to each person, and you have to meditate on it for 20 minutes a day. And you can't share your mantra with anybody. If you do, it'll lose its power. And so I thought this was very interesting and alluring and perfect for me. And then I went to their website, and I found out that I would have to pay thousands of dollars to get this mantra and take their classes. So I didn't have that money, obviously. So I didn't do it, and I was really disappointed. And then not too long later, I came to Krishna consciousness, and we get this mantra for free. And it's the highest mantra of all, and you don't have to pay anything for it. So I just want to express my appreciation to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for coming and giving us this highest mantra for free, to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada for bringing it to us here in the Western world. Hare Krishna. Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. You're so welcome. Thank you for listening.